Het is vandaag 4 augustus, donderdagavond, en het is weer tijd voor de SDN-cast nummer 13. Vandaag zijn de presentatoren Marcel Meijer en Maart van Stam. Fani heeft een etentje met zijn vrouw, die is jarig vandaag. Gefeliciteerd namens het hele SDN-cast-team. We bespreken vandaag weer het nieuws, de events, en we hebben al gastspreker, Mr. Moffat, over Power BI. And he will jump in a bit later after we did doing the news.
How cool is that? Hey Maarten.
Daar zijn we dan.
Mooi. Daar zijn we. Wat hebben we allemaal voor nieuws, Maarten?
Een heleboel nieuws volgens mij.
Kom op, kom uit het nieuws.
We ook live zijn op YouTube, dus dat gaat ook goed. Voor een keertje. Nou, laten we het nieuws erin gooien. Uiteraard beginnen we met het nieuws van deze week. De Windows 10 Anniversary Edition, hè? Dat is augustus 2. Dat is de verjaardag van mijn broertje. Dus die heeft een speciaal cadeautje gekregen. De Windows 10 Anniversary Update, available August 2nd.
En heb je hem al? Heb je het hem al?
Ik heb hem op heel veel machines heb ik hem al staan. Ik kwam erachter dat op deze machine waar ik nu op zit dat nog niet heeft. Dus als ik halverwege wegval, dan weet je dat ik in een update.
Ik heb hem ook. En het enige wat mij tot op heden wat tegenvalt is dat de muis soms niet altijd het even goed doet. Mijn Bluetooth muis. Maar voor de rest werkt het allemaal als een zonnetje.
Ik moest laatst een keertje terug naar de RTM-versie. Dus eigenlijk de Windows 10 versie zoals die was gereleased vorig jaar. Ja, dat is toch wel weer een terugslag, moet ik zeggen, hoor. En dat is helemaal op het moment dat je terug gaat naar Windows 7.
Ja.
Dan weet je bijna niet meer hoe het werkt.
Nee, dat klopt. Als je overstapt naar deze versie, dan moet je ook je Windows Visual Studio updaten. Want daar zit dan een nieuwe SDK bij, hè?
Ja, daar komen we straks ook nog even op terug.
Maar dan...
Volgens mij 4.6.2.
Yep.
En als je daarvoor wil ontwikkelen, dan moet je die ook ophalen.
Klopt.
Er is een speciale manier ook hè, om de Windows 10 Anniversary Update te krijgen op het moment dat als je een Windows Update doet en je ziet hem niet gelijk. Dan kan je ook via de website
updaten.
Kan je updaten. Normaal gesproken is het zo dat je op de update en security knop drukt en dan check voor updates. En dan komt hij daarbij te staan. Hè? Feature update to Windows 10 version 16.07. En dan kan je hem downloaden. Maar je kan ook gewoon naar de website toe gaan. Ik heb dat volgens mij op Twitter ergens neergezet. En dan kan je hem ook gewoon downloaden via een knopje daar. Er staat Get Windows 10 Anniversary Update. Hier staat wat jij net noemde.
Ja, update voor de SDK.
Anniversary Update SDK, die is nu beschikbaar. Die kan je dus nu ook je apps bouwen met die SDK. En specifieke apps beschikking stellen voor de anniversary updates die ik gebruik dan maakt van die speciale dingen zoals Windows Ink en de Cortana API's en noem het allemaal maar op. Bash, dat is ook heel belangrijk. Daar doen we het eigenlijk allemaal voor.
Dus.
Ja. Nou, dat is de Windows 10 update. Een ander interessant verhaaltje is dat een tijdje geleden, ik denk een week of 2 geleden, is Stack Overflow begonnen met documentatie op te nemen in zijn omgeving. En dan kan je, ik zal het hier even laten zien, kan je per topic kijken naar een stuk documentatie. Dus ik noem hier bijvoorbeeld VBA. Waar iedereen gebruik van maakt. Dan kan je zien hoe je variabels moet declareren en conditional formatting, introduction to VBA. En er staan dan weer wat daar allemaal aan de hand is. Maar dat is dus niet alleen over VBA zo, maar dat is eigenlijk over allerlei verschillende onderwerpen. En je kan dat benaderen door bovenin Stack Overflow op Documentation te drukken. En dan kan je zoeken naar een tag of je kan gewoon rechtstreeks naar een onderwerp toe gaan. En die is dan weer onderverdeeld in topics.
Handig, dus je hoeft niet meer te googlen, je kunt gelijk rechtstreeks naar Stack Overflow.
Ja, nou wat ik eigenlijk verwacht is dat je hebt natuurlijk die Developer Assistant in je Visual Studio omgeving. Die maakt nu al gebruik van
Stack Overflow.
Van Stack Overflow om daar voorbeelden uit te vissen. Ik verwacht dat daar een stuk documentatie ook in betrokken gaat worden.
Kun je het hier ook als gebruiker toevoegen, documentatie toevoegen?
Ja,
Of,
en je kan daar dus ook punten mee verdienen.
Okay.
Dus dat ik wat toevoeg en ik heb hier bijvoorbeeld wat toegevoegd onder arrays. In dat geval heeft dat me 2 punten hier opgeleverd. Dan zie je wat ik in dit geval heb gedaan. Ik heb een stukje doorgestreept, een heel stukje toegevoegd en daar krijg je nou weer puntjes voor.
Kijk.
Dus dan wordt jouw hoe heet dat dingetje, je reputation, die gaat dan omhoog. Nee, je ziet, ik ga echt als een speer omhoog. Ik zit nu in de top 10 van dit jaar. De gebruikers van dit jaar die puntjes hebben verzameld, dus zit ik nu in de top 10.
Goed bezig, Maarten.
Ja. Ja, daar word je MVP voor, hè?
Precies. Heel goed.
Dat was eigenlijk niet wat ik wou melden.
Oh.
Ik wou eigenlijk melden dat Microsoft heeft besloten om te partneren hierin. En hun eigen documentatiesysteem koppelbaar te maken aan het Stack Overflow systeem.
Ja, kijk aan.
Microsoft heeft, we zijn een paar weken geleden hebben we dat besproken. Hij is begonnen met docs.microsoft.com.
Ja.
De API-reference content daar het op te zetten. En alles wat op MSDN en Technet staat, om dat daar allemaal te gaan samenvoegen. En nu gaan ze dit initiatief van Stack Overflow gaan ze dat adopteren en gaan ze daar aan meedoen. Dus ze gaan het makkelijker maken om dat samen te voegen.
Handig.
Dus ik denk ook dat inderdaad dat in die developer add-in ook allemaal weer terecht gaat komen.
Lijkt me wel, ja.
Dus dat is een goede ontwikkeling voor als je dingen moet zoeken. Dan komt er weer zo'n nieuw O'Reilly boek uit van hoe google ik dingen op Stack Overflow en zo.
Ja, Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V.
Ja.
Next.
Dan is er een tijdje geleden een leuke gathering geweest. Het Botness gathering. En Fani is vorige week op de fix-up heeft hij wat dingen over bots laten zien. Dat betekent dat we nu, zodra we hem een mail sturen, hij is vergeten dat ding uit te zetten. Dan krijgen we nog steeds antwoorden van een of andere bot terug met I see, I understand en dat soort waarschuwopmerkingen.
Heel in lijn van de verwachtingen van Fani.
Fani, ja. De reden waarom ik dit eigenlijk hier opnoem is dat de video's voor dat event zijn nu allemaal online gekomen. Met hoe je dingetjes doet. En, dus dat is als je je verveelt, dan kan je daar weer je broek ophalen. En kijken naar de video's van dat event.
Cool. Nice.
Unity 5.4 is uit. Weer een nieuwe versie. Van Unity 5.4.
Handig voor de HoloLens.
HoloLens, 3D graphics, noem het allemaal maar op. Kijk eens mooi bij slaapkamer. En wat
Heb je er wel eens wat mee gedaan, Maarten?
Nou, ik heb er heel globaal een beetje een eerste trial dingetje gebouwd.
Ja.
That's it, meer ook niet.
Ja.
Je moet ook een beetje in de lijn zitten van wat je aan het doen bent, denk ik. Eigenlijk is dat met ontwikkelen over het algemeen het geval dat je Zodra je echt dingen gaat bouwen, ja, dan leer je er ook mee om te gaan. En dan, ja, dat zijn dan de dingen die je doet. Microsoft breidt in Middenmeer extra uit. Dat is inderdaad die vlakbij. Dat is als ik hier die kant op wijs. Ik breek mijn arm af. Langs de A7, daar staat echt een enorm terrein. Als je daar langs rijdt met je auto, dan zie je een heel groot hekwerk staan. En binnen dat hekwerk, ongeveer van 5 kilometer ongeveer breed, zie je er één hoekje staan en er staat dan één zo'n blokje. Zoals we hier op die foto zien. En het idee is dat het hele hekwerk... Oh, kijk. Ik kreeg een Windows fout. Mijn geheugen begint vol te lopen, denk ik. Nou, zolang je het doet, doet hij het. Maar ze gaan het datacenter versneld uitbreiden. Ik moet even wat Windows sluiten. Want anders loop ik uit mijn geheugen vandaan. Kennelijk. Dus dat betekent allemaal extra manschappen aan het werk hier in Nederland. Misschien kan je nog solliciteren als netwerkbeheerder.
Of als beveiliging, want volgens mij lopen er niet heel veel netwerkbeheerders.
Nee, volgens mij kwakken ze een paar van die containers daar neer. En dan sluiten ze die grote stekker daarop aan. En dan doet alles het. En de beheer uit het buitenland.
Heel HoloLens. Hij is nu ook al te kopen.
Editions is nu ook beschikbaar voor iets van business. Wat was het ook weer? Ik zag
voor niet commerciële, of voor commerciële oplossingen, maar ook voor je hoeft nu niet meer een application in te vullen om aan te geven van wat je gaat maken of wat je gaat doen. Ja, iedereen kan in principe nu zo'n HoloLens bestellen. Ja,
je moest eerst moest je een heel groot
business case hebben.
Vullen en dan moest je gaan vertellen wat je ermee ging doen en wat je dacht dat je ervan ging maken. En dan ging zij beoordelen in de triage of jouw case interessant genoeg was. En dat is allemaal komend vervallen. De beschikbaarheid wordt nu wat groter gemaakt. De eerste partij van die dingen hebben ze verstuurd. Aan Dennis bijvoorbeeld. We moeten hem altijd 1 keer noemen tijdens onze SDN. Is het niet goed genoeg?
Roy heeft er ook een. Roy Jans.
Ja. Maar nu kan je, ik zag hier, als business customer, nog steeds wel in de United States en Canada, kan je dat ding bestellen.
Ja. En al gedaan, Maarten?
Nee, ik vind hem nog steeds iets te duur.
€3000 of dollar, hè?
Ook liever een mooie service voor of zo. Kijk, ik heb wel een bril op, dus ja, moet je dan met 2 brillen, hè?
Ja, in jouw geval.
Je wordt het allemaal niet scherper van.
Framework 6.4.6.2.
Dit is eigenlijk het framework waar Windows 10 Anniversary Edition op draait. Hè?
Ja.
En die moet je dus even downloaden. En die krijg je bij de Visual Studio Update 2015 Update 3. Dus niet Visual Studio 15, maar Visual Studio 2015 Update 3.
Ja, en dat is ook als aparte update.
Ja, je kan hem ook, dit is zoals hier zit, als ik hier op het dingetje klik, dan krijg ik de aparte update. Dan hoef je geen Windows of geen Visual Studio te installeren.
Maar ook als je gewoon
hij zit
Visual Studio updates kiest, dan komt hij ook vanzelf mee.
Ja. En dan, tada! Jij hebt hem al in je kast staan, Marcel.
Ja, dat is mooi hoor.
Zit je te liegen of...
Nee, ik heb hem.
Echt, kunnen we dat zien ook? Of, is dat...
Nee, hij staat beneden in de woonkamer, maar ik kan de controller straks wel even ophalen. Als Dick aan het voorlezen is, dan kan ik wel even de controller ophalen. Het enige nadeel van die S is, het is een mooi ding, alleen er zit geen standaard connector meer op voor de Kinect. Dus je moet met je Windows Kinect connector, moet je hem verbinden aan je Xbox One. En dat is een beetje onhandig. Want daarmee hebben ze gelijk het hele verhaal dat je nu niet meer een extra power brick nodig hebt. Hè?
Ja,
Bij de oude Xbox had je dat nodig. Bij de Xbox One had je dat nodig. Een extra power brick waarbij je de hele machine moest doen. Nou, daar zit nu geen power brick meer in, maar je steekt een stekkertje gewoon achter in de Xbox One. Maar ja, die connector voor de Kinect, die heeft ook zijn eigen voeding nodig. En dat betekent dus weer een nieuwe power brick erbij.
Ja, maar dan heb je dus de brick van de Kinect staan in plaats van de Xbox zelf.
Dus het is wel een mooi ding. Hij is wel veel kleiner dan de ander.
Ja, dat komt natuurlijk. Ja, en dan buiten dat is die missie dan die baksteen nog.
Die Kinect die kun je er wel weer op krijgen, maar dan moet je dan de connector kopen in de store.
Ja, want ik heb van de week een oude 360 geïnstalleerd hier op zolder. En dat was hetzelfde verhaal. Mijn kastje, het dingetje erin. Maar dan moest ik ook nog een half kastje reserveren om de brick van die 360 erbij te leggen.
Ja, bijvoorbeeld.
Wel een hele grote ruimtevuller. Nou, daar zijn we nu vanaf.
Ja. Het is wel een mooi ding.
Nou, daar ga je er later nog een demo van geven.
Absoluut, dat gaan we volgende keer doen.
API for Azure AD Identity Protection is now available in Microsoft Graph. Nice. En dan gaat bij jou natuurlijk gelijk een bel rinkelen. Zie je wel, ik wist het.
Hoor ik daar een belletje?
Dat is op zich wel een interessant spul, want er zit al dat, als ik het een beetje goed begrepen heb, zit daar die machine learning in, waarbij ze de stromen identificeren en dan kijken of er een afwijking is. Als je bijvoorbeeld 3 betalingen doet hier in Amsterdam in Europa, en ineens komt er in Kenia een betaling langs, dan gaat die betaling toch een beetje opvallen. En die security, die identity protection, die ziet dat dan gelijk. Dat je op een andere plaats inlogt. En dan gaan er weer allerlei bellen af. Ja, zie je, er gaat weer iemand in Kenia inloggen. En dat is nu toch aan de... Er wordt wat gefraudeerd hier, zeg.
Ja, ik weet niet wat het is hoor, in Middenmeer, maar...
Dat hebben ze dus nu toegevoegd aan de Microsoft Graph. En dan moet ik even het schermpje weer wisselen.
Docker.
General Availability. Generally.
Ready for production.
Is eigenlijk hetzelfde. Dit was Docker voor Mac en Windows was tot nu toe in preview. Ik heb dat van de week geprobeerd die Docker te installeren op een van mijn machines. Dat vond hij niet goed.
Oh, want?
Niet genoeg geheugen.
Oh.
4 gig op een machine was niet genoeg. En dat is eigenlijk wel redelijk verklaarbaar ook, want wat hij doet is hij maakt een Hyper-V ding aan. Wat ik tenminste zag. En die heeft per definitie hebben die al veel geheugen nodig. Dus ik moet een andere machine zoeken om dat nog een keer op te gaan proberen. En dan hoop ik dat ik wel genoeg geheugen heb. Heb jij hem al geïnstalleerd?
Nee, nog niet. Ja, ga nu net eens even kijken.
Op je Mac.
Ja, ga ik dan op mijn Mac doen inderdaad.
General Availability. Er komt een heleboel uit General Availability, maar dat heeft denk ik allemaal ook te maken met, de datum van de Anniversary Update. Alhoewel dit eigenlijk meer met Office 365 te maken heeft. Is de Microsoft Excel API. Ook dat ding was tot nu toe gewoon in preview en is nu general available gemaakt. Dus je kan Excel aanspreken via een REST API, calculation service te gebruiken, reporting service, data service. Er zijn al wat derde partijen die gebruiken die bende. Te veel om op te noemen allemaal.
Nice.
En er kwam er nog even vers van de pers. Dat Xamarin de .NET Standard Library Support heeft toegevoegd aan zijn systeem. En ik moest er wel even naar kijken, want er staan er wat voorbeelden in deze blogpost van James Montemagno. Ik spreek het ongetwijfeld weer verkeerd uit.
Geeft niet, joh.
En die liet hier een schermpje zien. En met die kan je als target kiezen. En dan staat er hieronder nog even gepast erin. Target.net Framework voor het platform standard. En die had denk ik volgens mij gewoon in het lijstje moeten staan.
Ja, maar dat is waarschijnlijk nog een mock-up.
Ja, dat is nog een mock-up vers van de pers. Nou, het idee is, en dat zie je eigenlijk in dit staatje, is de .NET standaard platform, die moet eigenlijk beschikbaar komen voor de .NET Core Framework, Xamarin, Windows Platform, Windows, Windows Phone en ja, Windows Phone Silverlight wordt eigenlijk niet meer verder ontwikkeld. Dus die ondersteunt dan de 1.0 versie en verder niks. Het idee is dus dat het standaard ding gaat overal onder zitten, ook onder Unity, die staat hier niet in het lijstje. En dat ze dan in par komen met de .NET framework zoals die in het volledige framework zitten. Maar dan op X-plat, om het even populair zo te noemen.
Ja. Nice.
Ja.
Het wordt nog wel wat.
Wordt nog wel wat, ja. Dan hebben we nog, eens even kijken, de events.
Ja.
We beginnen even met de event van vorige week. Dat was het fix-up event van Hani. Ja, die heeft al eens een nieuw event klaargezet voor 22 september.
Kijk aan. Xamarin en ALM.
Die nu voor reserveren.
Heel goed.
En er wordt nog een spreker gezocht. Misschien jij het gaat doen of ik ga doen. Of Hani. Komt allemaal op zijn poot.
Dat komt allemaal goed.
Komt allemaal in de krant.
Van Fabeltjesland.
Deze week is de NDC Sydney.
Ja.
En al die jongens weer naartoe met Scott Hanselman en Rachel Rees. Die is nu heb ik vorige week verteld, die is nu onderdeel geworden van de .NET Foundation. Dus misschien dat ze daar nog wat over gaat vertellen. Hier zie je Damien Edwards hier van Live ASP.NET. Ik doe het al elke week met Scott Hanselman, behalve deze week, want we zitten natuurlijk daar. En net zoals wij een livecast.
Nou, het is er wel veilig. Troy Hunt is er ook.
Ja, precies. Dus, daarom is de hele band ook niet doorgegaan deze week. Geen live ASP.NET-cast. Die NDC wordt altijd de sessie die gedaan wordt achteraf publiek gemaakt. Wordt een video laten zien. Of tenminste, die kan je dan de video-opnames kan je casten. naar jezelf toe kan je het zo nog een keertje bekijken. Dus je hoeft er niet per se naartoe. Dus als je nog denkt van ik moet er naartoe, want anders mis ik alles. Dat kan achteraf, kijk het gewoon.
Het is wel leuk dat er een aantal van onze SDN-sprekers die wij hebben, hè, Maarten Balieu en dat die daar nu ook zijn en daar ook spreken.
Ja, en die komen natuurlijk ook een beetje uit deze buurt, toch? Of niet?
Ja.
Dan gaan we verder met events die op stapel staan.
Give your code of voice.
In Redmond deze keer.
Yep.
8 tot 12 augustus. Nou, daar zou je dus heen moeten, want ik geloof niet dat die de video's online zetten achteraf.
Nee, volgens mij Visual Studio Live niet in ieder geval.
Nee.
En Xamarin Dev Days.
Die gaat Marcel de Vries in Nederland doen, in Amsterdam.
En Roy Cornelissen.
Maar Xamarin, die doet het over de hele wereld door. Dus er worden dan
Sydney.
op verschillende locaties. Inderdaad ook weer in Sydney, maar op een andere datum. Amsterdam is 27 augustus. Kan je op inschrijven nog? Als hij tenminste niet vol is. Heb je gekeken of hij vol is?
Ik heb niet gekeken, maar ik denk dat er nog wel wat ruimte zal zijn.
Even kijken. Inloggen en anders heb je pech. Dan ben je te laat. Maar daar kan je altijd nog naar.
Het SDN-event.
SDN-event. Op 2 september.
Jazeker.
In
Zeist.
hou het een beetje spannend.
En zo is een hele interessante dag. Hè? Ik bedoel, het programma dat gaan we deze week finaliseren. En dan gaan we zorgen dat dat in het weekend op de site komt te staan. Alleen we hebben een ander iemand bereid gevonden om met zijn HoloLens langs te komen. Roy Jansen komt langs met zijn HoloLens.
Oké.
En die gaat een sessie doen en die gaat, hij zal de hele dag aanwezig zijn. Dus dan kun je vast en absoluut kun je dan kennis maken met een HoloLens.
Dat zal voor veel mensen zal dat de eerste keer zijn, denk ik. Om in het echt een HoloLens te zien dan.
Bij deze een live confession. Voor mij zal het ook de eerste keer zijn.
Het is niet waar.
Ja, het is waar. Het is echt waar. Jij hebt hem op het beeld gezien.
En opgehad.
Ja.
En ik moet zeggen, het is toch wel spectaculair.
Nou, ik tel af totdat het zover is.
Nou, ik zit eigenlijk te wachten op een mooie consumer edition die wat betaalbaarder is dan deze versie. Want als softwareontwikkelaar, ja, dat schiet niet op, hè. Dat geld groeit ons niet aan de bomen.
Nee?
Bij mij nog niet. Ik heb straks nog even buiten gekeken, maar het hangt er nog steeds niet.
Ja, je moet het ook goed vochtig houden. Dat is het eigenlijk al. Vreemd.
Misschien hou ik het vochtig met de verkeerde.
Volgende event. Level Up Mobile.
En dat is wederom van Marcel de Vries. Jongen. Brechtje de Leij, Jorn de Vries. Is dat zijn broer, Jorn de Vries?
Nee, Jorn is van Flitsmeister. Next.
Ah, oké. Nee, hebben we vorige week ook al een keer genoemd, dus ik zal er niet veel woorden over vuil maken. De link staat gewoon weer in onze
show notes.
Gewoon op onze SDN-site staat vermeld. Even kijken. Ja, hij valt er hier net buiten, maar zodra de eerste afvalt, dus zodra de eerste afvalt, dan komt de volgende weer in de lijst.
Heel goed.
Dus de actuele events die staan daar. Nog even een korte opmerking over codeuren. Dus het record om de kindertjes aan het programmeren te krijgen. Ik ben benieuwd of ze dat bij mijn kinderen op school ook gaan doen. Maar onze school die is niet zo geavanceerd volgens mij.
Ga jij dan toch regelen?
Ja, ik heb ook geen tijdboom in mijn tuin staan.
Nee?
Dus ik ben bang dat ik dat ook over moet slaan. Want ik moet dan weer een SDN-cast voorbereiden.
Oh ja.
Nieuwsitems. En dat gaat je ook niet in de koude kleren zitten, moet ik zeggen. Wat dat betreft wel respect voor die gasten van .NET Rocks en Windows Weekly. Als je dit een paar keer gedaan hebt, dan krijg je daar wel respect voor, hoor.
Absoluut.
Nou, dan kunnen we niks anders doen dan nog oproepen voor sprekers en artikeltjes. Want wij zoeken voor ons magazine natuurlijk altijd nog mensen die leuke artikeltjes willen schrijven over de HoloLens, of .NET Framework, of Power BI, of dat soort dingen. En voor september zaten we volgens mij vol qua sprekers. Ja. Maar wees niet getreurd, want in december hebben wij ook nog weer een event. En daar kunnen we altijd nog weer wat mensen gebruiken. Die daar,
sowieso meld je aan, hè, want als er een event komt of als we een mogelijkheid zien, al dan niet bij een fix-up of bij een .NET meetup, dan gaan we je vragen of helpen.
Ja, en als ze zelf helemaal vol zitten, dan weten we altijd nog wel een paar mensen die ook nog wel een gaatje hebben die gevuld moet worden. Dus kijk vooral als even daar ergens onderin. staan de links alweer waar je contact kan opnemen.
Heel goed, Maarten.
Dan is het nu tijd geworden om onze grote vriend uit Canada erbij te trekken. Alleen ik zie hem niet meer.
Nee, ik zie hem ook niet.
Ik denk dat hij even een plasje aan het plegen is. Dus even, kan er even, als ik daarop klik, dan zien we helemaal niks. Hè? Ja, kijk. Daar hij is.
Mr. Wonderful.
Are you talking about me?
Yes, we can't call you by your name because Google is trying to block us in any way.
That's pretty funny.
I tried to create this hangout with your name in the description and it was already a full block.
I was thinking I'd have worse problems with that, but I haven't.
Yeah, in general, I believe you don't have too many problems with that, but and I don't see why, because I have a nephew is the same name.
Mm-hmm. It's not Dirk, not Dirk.
No, it's also your name.
Be careful.
Oh, then you can't even say my name? What the heck?
I try to avoid it.
We can say your last name, Mr. Moffat.
You know, I'm really pleased by something. I didn't realize Martin was so good at multitasking, because I've been noticing while listening to you on Facebook, Martin's been posting like crazy on Facebook information about Office as he's been talking. It's amazing, Martin.
Crazy. The things I have to do to make this work, I have to switch between, to post Facebook items, tweeting, and yes. And you are here because
I have nothing better to do.
Oh, that was it. Yeah. And you wanted to show us the nice weather over there.
Yeah, it's just to tell you that Canada isn't always cold and snowy.
And most times we have contact and you are sitting in 2 meters of snow and then your head just surfaces the snow.
Pretty much, yes. A little exaggeration.
You have these funny dogs jumping all over the snow and going crazy in what they... Oh, that's not
There's
really
a dog right now.
He dead? Did he die?
So, yeah. No, it's hot. It's 32 degrees outside.
Wow.
With humidity. Mm.
That's Fahrenheit?
Nope, Celsius.
Well, you never know. No, we invited you because you told us you had something interesting about Power BI.
I hope so.
And that's always interesting.
Actually, I should go like this, I guess, right?
Yeah, and when it's open,
Bing! I think the cash register's empty, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I just was telling them that we don't have a tree in our garden growing money on.
I think an adult worked hard at building that capability.
Yeah. Do you have your screens ready?
I hope so.
Someone at the door?
Yeah, somebody's phoning.
Oh, really? Do you have to take it?
No. But I have to wait it out.
Yeah, for special effects. Do we have a phone here? Special?
Oh, yeah.
No, that's not a phone.
No, that's a real phone. Well, how can I share my desktop? Okay, go up here and go share screen, right?
Yep.
What if I choose that?
I will put the focus on you, so you're not swapping out everyone when someone else is speaking. So we now have this very interesting black screen. Oh, okay. There is Windows 10, I believe.
All right, good. Now can you see me? No.
Mac,
okay,
right?
Actually, I'm running Windows 10 on VMware on the Mac. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, that's the best machine to run Windows on. It's the Mac.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's the best. It's a hardware that I like. I almost never use any Mac software, but I use the hardware all the time. So, can you see me now, or my screen?
Yeah, we see you.
Okay. Now, can you see Windows?
No.
Nope.
You have to share it again, I think.
Again, well, that's fine. I just got to learn the tricks here.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I can hear myself.
Yeah, I think it's through Marcel, because I
Can
also
you-
myself through Marcel, I think.
Can you get an earpiece or something, Marcel, or
You shut up.
plug your head in?
Yep.
I
Thank
thought
you. Ah, much better.
it was a nice echo effect. I also
Yeah.
have some effects. I can see if I can change my voice like this. Is
Oh
this
my-
much better so?
Oh, that's ridiculous. I can hear myself still, but not as badly. So can you see that slide?
Yeah, and I still hear you indeed.
I'm still hearing an echo.
Yeah.
If somebody else out there could have their microphone unmuted, I don't know. Hmm? No, that's not how it works. So anyway, boys, should I
Go ahead.
start?
Stage is
Go
yours.
ahead. You're not going to ask me anything beforehand?
Sure, we
No?
will.
You will ask me afterwards.
Well, maybe during the show. So, if
Yeah, it's nice to know that somebody's listening. So if you guys have any, just go or laugh at me or whatever or something, so I know that there's somebody in the room. Because it is tough sometimes when you're on remote and like this, and everybody's muted, and you don't know you're talking to anybody. So anyway.
if you
So
check,
what the heck is?
if you check YouTube, I see there's someone watching now. So,
Oh, that's wow.
identify yourself, then put yourself in the IM on YouTube, and then we can respond to that.
I am on YouTube.
Yeah, that's
Here?
not us. That's not us.
The
That's
chat?
for
No.
viewer.
Oh, well, that's okay. That's fine.
Unless you also have a screen with YouTube on it.
If you have any questions from the crowd, if there is any, give me a shout.
Yeah.
Okay. So I might as well start talking about this, right?
Sure.
What the heck is Power BI? This is the title of my presentation. Now, what we're going to deal with today, I'm going to talk about what Power BI is and why there's so much noise about it. I mean, in some circles there's a lot of noise about it, but at Microsoft especially, whenever they are talking about anything lately, they talk about Power BI. I also want to talk about Power BI and how it handles, how the data is fed into Power BI. And then I'm going to also show a way that Excel can be the key to processing data to be used for Power BI. Not just because I know Excel, because I also know SQL and I also know Access, and I can source data various ways into Power BI. But how I have found that it falls back to Excel as an exceptional tool to feed data to Power BI, assuming that you have the same approach to Power BI that I have, which we'll talk about. And then we're going to talk about Power BI source targets. In other words, once we've accumulated data that's going to be used in Power BI, where is it going to be placed so that Power BI can consume it? And I'm going to make an argument for either Excel files in OneDrive or ultimately tables in SQL Azure databases out in the cloud. And then I'll conclude with what I have determined is the story. Now, what is Power BI? Power BI is a tool that creates dashboards, plain and simple. And so what you've got here is 5 dashboards that I have created over the last while. It's a tool that creates dashboards that are exposed in the browser. So that's a really big thing. Not only does it offer incredible bells and whistles, as you'll see, in terms of its capability, but it's also can be delivered on any device, on any browser on any device, as long as you can read it in the browser, because it's totally server-based. Totally server-based, provided by Microsoft. And now, what you've got is the ability to do stuff like this. This is an example of a Power BI slide that I've done. For those of you who, I would be surprised if many of you really have done a lot of thinking about Power BI or even looked at it. Because it doesn't, I don't know, some people seem to be really into it, but a lot of people just don't know it exists. So that's why I do these kind of seminars, give you some idea of what's possible. Now what you're looking at here is what looks like an inert set of charts. But what's interesting is you can see it's calculating at the top. What it's actually doing is it's refreshing the data to bring up into this the first time. This is, like I say, the first time in a while, therefore it takes some time. But watch what happens. I can click on an individual item here. Like I can say, let's look at deep mines only. And when I click on this slicer here, the charts change. Now, the reason that it took a long time was because it was refreshing itself, and that actually is important. And what I'm going to tell you is a way to really improve the performance of Power BI to the point where it's virtually instant. And it's a problem that a lot of people are going to run into if they don't look at it the right way. I can go in here and I can say, let's look at a particular mine. Well, that particular mine doesn't have much going for it. There's a mine there. There's 2 mines. There's 3 mines. There's 3 mines here. What I'm doing is I'm clicking on slicers, and this slicer, just like a slicer in Excel, allows me to drill down on the screen by selecting from these various choices. And you see, because I've chosen deep mines in the Pontiac zone, this details the year-to-date tons, and these are the year-to-date, the daily tons, the month-to-date, and the year-to-date tons for these 3 mines. So this basically is the same as that, but please don't point that out. And then this is a table that shows the data that's included in these mines. Now notice how 2 of the mines have nothing, so they don't show up there, but the total is 1,000,001 tons. If I go back like this, and I go like that, and I select all, then I can see all mines, all data. This is what Power BI is. It's a dashboard creation tool for business analytics, for BI. And BI is a term that Microsoft sort of took over because it wasn't really, it had a different definition than Microsoft uses it for. BI for Microsoft is any kind of information that a company might want to see, any business intelligence or business information, whereas BI originally was OLAP servers, and fundamentally OLAP is at the core of this, but it's certainly not the only aspect of this. So let me go back out of here. This is another slide which actually has an interesting set of charts on it, and I'm going to sign in. And what it does is it is charting data that is test data, network test data from a client of mine, some of whom may be listening, but it's test data. So it doesn't really mean anything to anybody. All of this data is totally safe. I can go and I can say, give me data that goes to from this source, or from these 2 sources, or that source. And I can see the data that I'm looking for on my chart. Another example would be here. Now this particular slide has no charts on it at all. What it has is just data, which is kind of interesting because nobody thinks of it in those terms. What I've got here is receivables data. I can look at a given office for a given stretch of time. I can say, give me all my clients that are over 120 days. And there they are. And let's look at the most recent report, which is January 21, 2015. And on that report, these 2 clients were over 120 days, and this was how much money they owed for over 120 days. So what I've got is the ability to analyze data that is in a database, in this case an Azure database, and present this as a management report, or like this above here where it's an analytical report. I can also create what are known as dashboards. Those are just reports in their own right. You can consolidate multiple reports together to create what's known as a dashboard. And a dashboard has this capability. It looks exactly like a regular report, but it shows a chart, and if I click on that chart, it actually lets me go down into a child of that, which actually was the slide I just showed you. Let me go down to this one, and if I go in here, I've got a series of charts that are other ways of analyzing this same data. And some of these presentations are extraordinary. The thing about it that's cool is that there's so much more capability than Excel charting in the charts here. But the interesting thing is people have done so many interesting and bizarre things in Excel that sometimes there is things you can only do in Excel that you can't do in Power BI. But that's like a very small slice. You can do so much more in Power BI than in Excel that's really not an argument as far as I'm concerned. And so you notice when I click on each of these, they're opening the browser. Now, if I had the camera on, I could show you this running on my phone. Let me look at this one. This is the one we're going to look at today a fair amount. This is actually quite timely. This slide, this report actually, which could be a dashboard. There's sort of confusion as what's a report and what's a dashboard. A dashboard is a confluence of multiple reports. This is Clinton versus Trump 2016 average of all polls. And I can go in here and I can say, show me July and August, and look at the difference here in these polls. Here is what happened after the convention. This has Trump 48, Clinton 47, and as of today, it has Clinton 49, Trump 39. And what this is an average of all the polls that are being posted every day on a website that aggregates the polls. And I'll show you how I've tapped into that in Excel, and then how I'm publishing this, and it's coming up here in real time, in the sense of as currently as I refresh it. Now the question is, do you need absolute real time or real enough time? And as far as I'm concerned, 99% of reports will always be real enough time as opposed to real time. But if you want, there's ways you can do this in real time. This is actually quite cool. You can actually pick a range of dates, a month. You can pick by week. You can pick by quarter. You can pick by year. And you can say, okay, give me everything. And as you hover over each one of these, it'll tell you what the values are, and in this case, what the date and time was of that report. So this is pretty cool stuff.
What's the prediction?
There is. I don't have a prediction. I have a prediction, but I'm not willing to say it. Although I'm talking to a bunch of Europeans, so I can only imagine what the general opinion is. But right.
It's all goes.
And Canadians feel much the same way, but it's none of our business. So anyway, what we've got here is another example of the use of Power BI. So Power BI, you can create these things. You can create them quickly, and you can create them easily to a point. It's like so much technology, right? You can create something that's really cool and looks nice until somebody says, but can it do that? Or how am I going to get data that's going to feed into this all the time, reliably, every week, every day, every month? That's when it gets complicated. And fortunately, I'm talking to a group. Anybody who's listening to this is a IT professional, and they understand what I'm talking about. But the fact is, these reports apply to all sizes and types of business in all markets worldwide. This is truly a global technology. I mean, there's other technologies that have gone out there and competed with this. I forget the name of the most recent one. I could always find what it is. or the big name. But the point is that Power BI has actually surpassed all the others in basically Gartner's attention, which is usually the way a lot of this information gets disseminated. If Gartner likes it, then you're in. So what you've got in Power BI is a promise. I mean, I like to say it's like teenage sex. You know, a lot of people talk about it, but very few people are actually doing it. I assume it's the same there as here. Marcel, you're laughing, I take. But you know, there's a certain truth in what I say. It's just like senior sex. It's the same thing. But what you've got is something. Oh, answer the door. Answer the door, Martin.
I think it's Google calling in that they're going to block us.
Oh, is that what it means? Yes. Bang. So anyway, what happens is this applies to all sizes and markets. It's perfect for financial reporting, although it is not capable of producing an income statement and a balance sheet and a cash flow report. You can publish them as images to Power BI, but it doesn't have the power to create those kinds of items, which I have found is a problem on one client. The first thing they asked me about that one, and that was the end of the conversation. It's designed for analytics, and it is so much, there's so much more to financial and operations analytics than just income statements and balance sheets, but some people don't see that. It is great for general business reporting. I mean, my story over the centuries that I've worked in the business is that I spent a lot of time with operations people. An awful lot of what I've done over the years has not got dollar signs in front of it. It's production, it's tons of coal, it's tons of nickel, it's bottles of beer, it's network traffic going across a network or through a site. It's one of these things where it can be used for all kinds of stuff that don't have dollar signs in front of it. It can also be used, of course, for stuff with dollar signs. So it's also useful for HR because, like I showed you, you've got things like you can do now analytics of your HR. You know, the kinds of things that a senior manager would like to see. By the way, if I go back to production, this also is useful at a lower level in an organization than a lot of people think. You could use Power BI on a line, on a production line, pulling data directly from their internal production databases and showing real-time or real enough time information, like a minute information or hour information or even real-time information about production, about the running of their business right down to that line. It's also great for marketing and for sales. And then there's unknown unknowns. It's just what other things can clients think that you could conceivably use this technology for? Now let's have a look inside Power BI. I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, look, it does this, wow, but how does it do it? We're going to look inside Power BI, and then we're going to look in a thing called Power BI Desktop. And this is where the confusion starts. Let's go back, and let's go back again, and let's go look inside Power BI. Now, if I go into the browser itself, Power BI is a browser-based version of this technology. Now, just to confuse people, there is also a desktop version of this technology. That is called Power BI Desktop. Power BI Desktop and Power BI at the presentation level have all the same capabilities, and they work exactly the same. Power BI Desktop, on the other hand, handles the data. Power BI can represent data, but it can just bring in data and show that data. Power BI Desktop allows you to actually manage that data, to process that data, to aggregate that data, to add value to that data, and then publish it into a UI that then gets published on Power BI. In the end, everything in Power BI Desktop gets presented to the world, even if it's your little world, using the browser. I guess you could theoretically send Power BI, Power BX files around, but that's not a very practical way to do it. The interesting thing is in Power BI, you've got all kinds of control about who can see and who cannot see your information. It's got total security. You can add people, you can delete people at any time as administrator. You can isolate your various presentations by groups, by AD groups. There's all kinds of different ways you can secure and make sure that the wrong people don't see the information that you have. But ironically, there's still concerns about that in the business world. I know what that's like, but we're going to talk about ways that can be resolved or helped. So when I click on this item on the left here, I can come down and I can pick a dashboard. I could actually pick I've got two different workspaces, my workspace, which is a default, and I have another workspace called max, min, average. Within workspace, which is the generic one, I have a set of dashboards. I also have a set of reports. Now remember, these reports are made up these dashboards are made up of reports. And what you do is you can either have a dashboard that's a single report, or you can have it that's multiple reports. Like this dashboard that I showed you here, that you're looking at, is actually made up of two reports. This one and this one, which you've seen before. And they're both added to this. I'm not going to get into the details of that because that's for you later on. So I've got various kinds of reports. I have various analytics. This is a cool one. This is one of my favorite ones. It's going to take a few seconds to refresh, but it's a report that has eventually a word cloud on it. Again, the real importance of having as small a data set as you can in order to make this respond as quickly as possible. Now, we'll come back to that. I assume it'll be there. Now, how does this work? If I go into a particular data set, and what you're looking at here is a set of data sets. Let me explain that. The data sets are the data that feeds these reports. Each report is created by going into the data sets, like let's pick one here, like refresh test. Now what you'll see over here on the right-hand side is a set of data. Let's, yeah, a set of, that's a bad example. Let's pick this one. Now this one here has a data table, in fact two data tables as its sources. These data tables are acquired by importing the data into this program. So you can go down here and you can click on Get Data. You go Get Data, and you can choose from various sources as to where that data comes. We're going to talk about that later. In this case, this data is an Excel file, and in that Excel file, there are ranges. Let's go back here to this. There are ranges in that tables, list objects in that Excel file that I can pull in. Now, you could pull in data from a range in a spreadsheet. You can theoretically also pull data from a data model, which is created using Power Pivot. And for various and sundry reasons, that doesn't work as well as I believe it should. And it creates all kinds of interesting problems the way they've set it up. My hope is it will improve over time, but in the meantime, I don't care about that because it's, anyway, we'll talk about that in a bit. But the idea in this case is once you have a table, you have this blank sheet, all you have to do is go like this and drag an object out, and it says, this is the haul numbers. Or I can say, I can haul this out and say, this is the weights of all the different values that are in this database. Now you'll notice that this particular is only one record, one piece of information. So if I go here and I say take haul and drag it and drop it on here, then I will get a chart that is calculating in the upper left here that will give me the weight, which actually doesn't mean anything in the context of the chart I'm making, but it's going to be a chart that breaks this data out by haul by weight. Now, what could be going on here is the fact that we're using the internet strongly for our Google Hangout. I've noticed this when I use Live Meeting, that sometimes when you are connected, it sucks up a lot of bandwidth. And so that's probably what's going on here, because when I'm doing this in the real world, this is very quick. And I'm sorry about that. There it is, all right? Now what you have here is a list of halls and the weights. So here's data. It's a perfect example. I then have a suite of various presentations and visualizations that are defaulted, plus I can bring in custom visualizations, which are either offered by Microsoft for free that are designed by themselves or third parties and not included in the base, or you can have custom visualizations that are provided, say, by a vendor, like you can get a Salesforce custom visualization. But the default visualizations are like this. I can click here and it says this is a stacked bar chart. This is a different type of stacked bar chart. And if I float over it, it gives it a name, a clustered bar chart. This is a, come on, tell me what you are, a clustered column chart. I can go here and I can turn these into the proverbial line charts. Now it's changing to another type of chart. It's pulling this from the database. That's interesting because really the problem is the bandwidth. So please don't think that this is a generic performance problem. It is a bandwidth issue, and I don't think there's much we can do about it. Let's try. Okay, there it was. Of course it came out. Let's try it again here. This, of course, is your proverbial line chart. These are your various area charts. You can imagine all the different chart types that are available. There's a nice one. I love those. This would be your scatter chart, which also can do your various bubble charts. Nice. Of course, you've got your standard pie chart. You've got new types of charts like this and this, which is like a speedometer, but you can also add a visualization that actually looks like a speedometer. But what's really interesting, and it's not applying here, is this. If the data has a city name in it, and you say this, use the city name as the core field, it will actually show you where it'll show you the data for that city as a bubble of various sizes, depending on what that value is, wherever it is in the world. If you put in postal codes, if you say Canada and postal codes, it'll show you where it is in the various provinces or various postal zones within Canada. Needless to say, this does great demo. Look at, anybody ever see how many lakes there are in Canada? You wonder why we have more fresh water than anybody in the world. And by the way, this is where I'm reporting from right now. Right, just in case you're interested, this place called London, right here, that's where I am. So I can go, the other thing I can do with this that's kind of fun, and that was a huge revelation to me. If I pull Hall over, and I pull stand over here and say, these are my list of stands, I can change this to be a slicer. So once all these stands are located, I'm going to turn this into a slicer, sorry. I can then click on this, and it's going to automatically filter this sub-report to show only the stands that are in this particular hall. And again, the only reason this is a problem, literally, is because of the bandwidth. I could go and say, give me this hall instead. And it will, and the point is that all the relationships that are automatically in here, because they're fields that have multiple records, multiple fields, they're automatically aligned with each other, which allows you to create what is known as a slicer, just like you would in Excel, and you can change it, and it will automatically, trust me, change the children, which it's not doing right now, only because of bandwidth. Let me see if I can do this. Come on. Well, that's very telling. That bandwidth is not a problem with this, frankly. Hello? Stop trying to support it. Is that what you're telling me? I know. So anyway, but I guess we're looking at it as a classic scenario when if you're going to do a browser-based, server-based solution, you better darn well make sure you have enough bandwidth, A, and what's really important is that you be as efficient as possible in creating your data, and I'll show you that as we go along. Now, the other thing I can do here, I can go in, and in addition to all these other things, I have all kinds of formatting capabilities. So I can say I want the background of this to be shocking pink. Or I can say I want the font of this to be, let's see, general, what's outline? Let me see here, font, oh, okay, sorry. General outline color, border on, let's try this again. I want to say general, let's get rid of this so I can see more. And I can increase the font of my text so that it ends up being easier to read. Now remember, the other thing that you have to realize is that this eventually is going to be entirely full screen, and so what it'll do is it'll automatically resize itself to fit as big a screen as possible. All right, so you have that kind of capabilities. When I'm in here and I'm on an object like this, I can change the colors of each of my objects directly. I can say, okay, make it weight. Look at that. Woohoo! I changed it. Come on. Change, buddy. And it will change to yellow. Now, that's interesting. It does, trust me. Thank you. What we're going to have to find is software for you guys that isn't quite as demanding on bandwidth. But anyway, I don't know if you've ever seen that problem before, but that's interesting. So anyway, the whole idea behind Power BI is you create these objects or reports, and then you save them. And when you save it, you call it, okay, Martin Marcel Special. I don't know how you guys sell special, but anyway, Special, and I'll save that. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say when I started, I was going to say.
There it is. Now it's yellow.
Oh, there it's yellow. Yay! Okay, I was going to say Goedenavond, and from here, I guess where it is now, it's Middenmeer, but I don't know, is 3:18 midday or is it early evening? I don't know, but anyway. I just thought I'd try some Dutch on you. So anyway, what I've got is a file. I can edit it and I can save it again. Now this is now available that I can actually publish this. So I could say publish this to web, and what it would do is it would allow me to send somebody this link. Like I could, for example, send it to Marcel, or I could send it to Martin. And if I go to another browser window and I paste it and hit enter, as if I'd emailed it to somebody, this is outside of Power BI development. There is my lovely pink and yellow chart. Isn't that beautiful? But to give you an idea that it actually does work, yes, ka-ching, exactly.
Perhaps you should do something about your design skills. But
yeah! Well, I think I did some pretty good designs up here, so anyway.
Yeah, that one are good.
Yeah. Eat it. Just eat it, guys. There, that looks better, doesn't it?
That looks better, yeah, right.
Yeah. So the idea is that you can do all this in Power BI. So if I go back, I can go and I can re-edit this Marcel and Martin special, and I can save it again. And I can then share this with odd and sundry people. I can save it and publish it to the web. I can put it in as a dashboard, and I can actually share it on the internet. And the joy of this then is people who have access to these files, who are supposed to have access to these files, they can go out, they can grab this browser, they can hit it and refresh it, and if the data's changed, it'll automatically change. This is a huge breakthrough in the idea of dashboarding. But let's look at another thing in the interest of time. I'm going to open something else which is quite confusing. This is called Power BI Desktop. Now, Power BI Desktop, like I said, is exactly the same as Power BI in the browser as far as the UI is concerned. You can create the exact same charts, the exact same capabilities. You can bring in the actual customizations, the same customizations. It's the exact same tool. But it's designed to work in Windows. This ultimately was designed basically to be an Excel killer, which of course they'd never admit, but that's what they say. It basically has all the capabilities in it to allow you to source all the data just as if you would in Excel. It allows you to bring it together from multiple data sources within Power BI Desktop. But remember, this only runs on Windows. You notice it does take a long time to load. That was not a bandwidth problem. It does take a long time to load. And what you do is you create different files. So if I go in here and I open this file, which is the one I've been working on for the last couple of weeks, it hasn't taken me a couple of weeks. That's off and on several hours of work playing with this and testing it. This is a file that I'm opening, which is saved as a PBX file, and a PBIX file, sorry. And that is the extension for files created in Power BI Desktop. And again, it looks exactly the same as the one we were talking about before, but it is in Power BI Desktop. The difference is this data, that's the source of this, can be acquired directly from within this, and once you have your data, you can then actually add it, add measures. You can define relationships between tables. You've got queries that source this data. You have all the capabilities of what's known as get and transform, which is the renamed and repositioned Power Query, which is in Excel. All the same capability is in here to source data, transform that data, build relationships between tables, and ultimately then save it back with the file, and then use the tables you've created as sources for these various charts and objects. And then you publish it to Power BI like this. You publish it, and if you published it before, if you changed it, it asks you, do you want to replace what's there before, yes or no? I'm going to say no, and I'm not going to, but it will replace the same name object in Power BI, which will then be exposed in the browser. Now,
putting all this effects in.
Pardon me, what?
Marcel is putting all these special effects in.
Yeah, this is totally distracting and not appreciated, but that's okay. I'm okay.
It's not me.
No, yeah. So anyway, let's look at this data sourcing part. Yeah, are you telling me I'm running out of time already? No. You are, aren't you? Okay. When I go to data, this is a really important thing, is when you're within Power BI Desktop, you have quite a few choices when it comes to data sources. And look at this as I scroll down. Sybase, Teradata, Azure, OData, Hadoop, Exchange, ODBC, GitHub, QuickBooks. It goes on and on and on and on. Or you can sub by sections, files, databases, Azure, online services. All of these can be sources to be used as your tables to drive your various charts and visualizations on there.
That's crazy.
It gets nuts because what it is, it's a shotgun effect, right? And the fact of the matter is, at this time, and there's a lot of problems with the refreshability of a lot of those sources. And the point is, you don't know whether the source you want to use is going to work or not at this point, because they've been working on this for like a year and a half, and they have problems that they don't want to admit it, but they do. If I had $1 for all, or €1 for all the times I've got a thing, yes, we know there's a problem and we're working on it, I could buy a pretty nice lunch from the last 6 months of playing around with this, right? And so what I've done is I've gone to a great degree of effort to determine what really does work, because I want it to work right now. And the irony is that this product is built by the SQL team, and Microsoft wants to push Azure. Therefore, the most capable and reliable part of this is a connection to SQL Azure databases. The other thing is that this came originally from Excel, because this was originally PowerView. And so if you're pulling from standard Excel ranges, it's also extremely reliable. And so I looked at that and said, okay, well, that's all I care about, because in the end, I want to promote pre-aggregated data to Power BI. You can bring in millions of records. You can bring in multiple tables of raw data, and then you can aggregate it here in Power BI Desktop. But that means all of your data is going up to the cloud, which Microsoft says, of course, well, it's secure. Of course, it's secure. Well, people just don't like that, and in fact, in many parts of the world, like Europe, there are rules against that control and manage these kinds of issues. So anyway, that's how this works. You save it, and you publish it, and you create new measures, you create your tables, etc. Now, I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to say from current slide. Now, there's a lot of confusion about the difference between them. To me, what I've concluded about Power BI technology is it's insanely complex to learn. I mean, the problem with Power BI is it has, this is a horrible thing to say, but it does good demo, in the sense that it's really easy to demo Power BI and have the audience go, ooh, is that ever a nice yellow? Or, ooh, that's a nice pink, right? And it's very easy to create impressive demos. But it is insanely complex to learn all the bells and whistles in it, because it tries to be all things to all people, and there's a whole bunch of things that it says it does that it doesn't do, which is really frustrating. And it is really a true shotgun technology, which means it's not a bad thing. It just means that you got to find what works, and you got to use it. And then you have to look at what's coming down the pipe and keep looking, because you obviously don't want to freeze time, but you want to be able to move forward right now. And so I have come up with ways myself of how to work it so that it does work. And it's also, there's lots of advantages to what I concluded. But the truth is, Power BI is simple. You get a lot of crashes when you're developing. Not crashes when you're using it. It's sort of like Excel. If you've ever done development in Excel or even Access, it'll crash sometimes when you're developing it. But once you've compiled it and saved it, it runs quite fine. But the point is, it does crash. But again, like I said, much of it does not work. There's also a lot of confusion between whether you use Power BI or Power BI Desktop. If your sources are external and you say you're not in a Windows shop, then yeah, you use Power BI, but you actually give up some capability. But that capability is about 1/2 of the capability people really want to do with these kinds of things. But the irony is that typical users are going to ask for that 1/2%, right? You know what I mean? Oh, but can it do this? Why would you want that, right? But anyway, this will limit the reach of the overall product. Now I showed you.
That's probably the problem with it's a big gun with an awful lot of audiences, and so people are thinking everything is possible, right?
That everything is what?
Everything is possible, and everything should be possible.
Oh yeah, that's always the case. And even if it is possible, it's not easy. and the problem with Power BI is a lot of it doesn't work. And yet Microsoft buries their heads in the sand and says, well, yeah, we know there's issues. But the point is there are parts of it that really do work and that are always going to work. And I'm going to talk about those if you can give me the time. And it's not just because this is what I know. I have determined that this works and it works consistently and you can really do stuff with this. In fact, I'm just starting a new contract to apply this logic in a major fund here in Canada. Now, one of the things that's funny, and this is really funny, Microsoft has this vision that the world is just looking forward to moving their corporate data up into the cloud, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so what they've done is, if you move everything to Azure, it's very easy. You can connect to Azure super easy, as I'll show you. But if your data is behind your firewall inside your corporate environment, they've given you a capability called a data gateway. And you can install it on a machine or on a server inside your shop, and it then gives Power BI the right, if you give it the right logins, etc., to reach through the firewall, go to that original source data, and bring it up and aggregate it and create all your presentations for you. Pulling in either raw data, which is what most people would do in that scenario, or aggregated data. If in a perfect world it would be pre-aggregated data, but most people wouldn't do that. They're saying, no, just bring it all in. Just bring it all in, and then you can create your analysis. The advantage of bringing it all in is you can then drill down as far as deep as you want. Well, this is an analytical tool. You don't want to drill down to the most granular level. That's not the idea of an analytical tool. And you can say, well, don't tell me how to run my business. Well, sorry, I am telling you that it's an analytical tool. You're looking for trends. You're looking for comparisons. You're not looking at individual records. So that's a problem. The gateway is a non-starter. The only people that would use a gateway is if IT is actually running it themselves. And even then, I've worked in a lot of companies where if one group of IT went to the database DBAs and said, oh, we want to set up a gateway so we can go directly at your database. Can you imagine the response, Marcel, Martin? All right, they ain't going to like that. Okay, so this bothers me because it's going to hurt this. But again, there's ways around this. I believe this is going to be a tough sell to IT departments, and that is a sad thing. Even if the other thing is, even getting Power BI desktop installed could be difficult, because you have to get it installed on a user's machine. On every user who can conceivably create these things, you have to install this on their machine. Therefore, they have to be allowed to install this non-standard software on their image. And explaining this could be a red flag to IT when you say, well, what do you want to do with it? Well, I want to take corporate data and publish it to the internet. What do you think the response to that would be, right? But without, and yet at the same time, without Power BI Desktop, many of the features of Power BI double. So data gateways, even if you're in a perfect world and your IT department are cool, then you can use data gateways, although I still don't think it's a good idea. The user would need to have a Win64 machine or a VM somewhere out there. Then they would need to justify opening internal and external data sources to PBI internet servers. And this just would be a problem. So let's go to the next now. Now, you guys are going to say, Martin and Marcel, well, Dick, what else are you going to do? Of course you're going to come up with an Excel solution. Well, yes, I am. And there's a reason for this. There's a whole bunch of compounding reasons why. It's a simple, reliable management way to get data to Power BI. And after spending weeks of my own personal time learning all I can about that, I have come up with a simple way to do this, which I'm willing to tell you guys about. One of the things that bothers me is if I really show people this, then there's nothing in it for me because they can go and do it themselves. I understand that. But on the other hand, if I'm the only person who knows this technique in the whole world, that's not going to do me any good either. So I'm selective as to who I tell this, so you guys are lucky. If anybody other than Martin and Marcel are actually listening to this, you're consider yourself lucky. Even if all the other tech eventually works, if they eventually fix all the bugs in Power BI, I'd still consider that this is a solution because you can get actual results immediately. Now, the reason why Excel is a good solution now is not just this first line. In fact, that first line is irrelevant from the data standpoint. But the ability to refresh raw Excel sources is unassailable in the sense that if I have an Excel file in a OneDrive up in OneDrive, Power BI can pull that data. But let's look at this. If I'm going to do a chart, my chart is, if you do it in Power BI desktop with original data, it's going to have to do all the calculations to come up with what you really want to use to create, to push into your table. You are never going to see the actual table that actually is going to feed into this chart. You need to pre-aggregate your data in order to create your chart. So why not pre-aggregate it in Excel first? The other thing about this is solution requires nothing more than Excel 2013 or higher with Power Pivot and Power Query in order to do it. It either needs a OneDrive business account in the cloud, a SharePoint site in the cloud, which most companies have, or a small, basic SQL Azure database account. And I'll say small for a very good reason. It does not need a data gateway. Here's the thing. If you pre-aggregate your data and just come up with the information that is going to be shown in your charts, you don't bring in granular data. You only bring it in pre-aggregated to the level you want, especially since it's analytics. You can put up information there that is secured to show, because 90% of corporate information is only of interest to the people in that corporation. I mean, more than 90%, right? You might not want to put your financial statements up there if you're worried about the cloud. But if you're doing production data, you're doing various kinds of performance analytics and key performance indicators, and you want that to be available on people's phones, on people's iPads, on people's Apples, on any machine, and be available anywhere in the world or anywhere in the country if you've got multiple locations, you can publish this stuff. You're not giving away the farm. You're not storing, human resource data. You could say, I've got so many people that have these skills and so many people that have these skills in these various offices. That's not giving away anything. But you don't want to show who they really are. You pre-aggregate the data. You know that there's a big problem with things like HIPAA in the U.S., PIPEDA in Canada, and what you guys would call Data Protection Directive 1995-46 EC. I don't know whoever thought of that one. And there's another one, Basel or something. Isn't Basel, or was Basel related to Sarbanes-Oxley? That was Sarbanes-Oxley. But you know, the kinds of things that people worry about. So here's what you do. You create an Excel file. You link to your data sources. You then clean up the data in Excel the way you would normally in Excel. You create your functions and your KPI as measures as required in Excel. Now this does require that you need to know Excel Power Pivot, and guess what? There's a lot of people out there that do. So they have an advantage. If you don't know it, it's time to learn it. You can actually create the charts that you're going to end up showing in Excel before you even publish them to the data to Power BI. So you can use it as a prototyping tool. You then create pivot tables in Excel that aggregate the data that you to the level that will be used in Power BI. Think about it. You take your raw data, you join everything together, and then you spit out a pivot table that is exactly the information that you want to chart. And then you publish that to Power BI. You run a short VBA macro that creates a small Excel file with each pivot table's data in a worksheet. And that ends up your source. VBA saves only this small file to OneDrive or writes the data to an Azure table. And this is the source of all your data for your Power BI solution. Now think about it. That's either a file, a little dinky file, sitting in a OneDrive folder, which is secure, with only the summary data. It's not raw data. You're not giving away anything. or it's pushed into a SQL Azure database, and that SQL Azure database then is your source, and it is secure as necessary. But the bottom line is, it is secure, but the thing is, if people are worried about it, you can control. If you do this in an efficient way, you then have a very controlled, auditable way to determine whether your data that you're publishing is compliant with the rules of the company, by having everything from one source, that having no direct connection between the Power BI through your firewall to your data. It's no difference than having any Azure database in the cloud or a OneDrive in the cloud. It's not. It's a one-way street. It's going out. It's never coming in and back out. It can be refreshed at any time. Now, let's have a look at this. Now, in the interest of time, I think I'm going to show you, because you guys talked all that Dutch at the beginning. I have no idea what you said. Sorry, guys, I had to say that. I mean, I was assuming I'd have that time. So anyway, let me open two examples here. I'm going to open one example that shows you the data side, and one shows you the publishing side. Okay, I'm going to open a file here called, oh, where are you? Okay. Yeah, I know. When you're doing a demo, you're supposed to know exactly what you're going to show. Sorry about, but I'm improvising down. I have a lot to show you, but I'm not going to show you everything. Okay, here we go. Now this file is a perfect example of what a lot of people will do with this. This is a very large Excel file. Very large Excel file. And what it has is mine data from, these are all a bunch of Australian mines that, and this is a bunch of data that doesn't exist, that has nothing to do with these Australian mines, somewhere else, and they're all changed. Everything's changed. But the concept is still works, right? This data that I can look at, I can actually query this data in Excel using pivot tables, and all this data comes from Power Pivot, and it's brought into Power Pivot directly from, in this case, SQL Azure, but it can also come from a regular SQL database or an Oracle database or any of the sources that you can conceivably use to source your data using Power Query or Power Pivot. So what we have is this huge set of tables up here of data that I brought in. I mean, this isn't the point is to show you how much data, how much complexity there is in the model, which has nothing to do with Power BI. But I have a model in Excel that is a typical thing that people have created, these huge models, and I want to add value to them by bringing them into Excel and then managing them in Excel. And what I'm doing is I'm bringing that data down and I'm seeing it in various charts, etc., etc. Now what I've done, though, I have planned, forecast, all of this data is coming out of, it was originally SQL database, but it got moved to Azure. And what I've got here now is a sheet called OneDrive. And what I can do on this sheet is I can actually tell it, this table, take these tables, which are pivot tables here, calculate them, and publish them to this OneDrive. And to do that, I have a really small, this is it. That's all the code right there. Boom, 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 boom. Not much code, right?
No.
This is the code that is going to, and this is generic. Therefore, if you're quick and you can type very quickly, you could use this. You don't need
YouTube.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's too late now. I guess it's there, right? So what you can do is this is generic, and I just populate this into various machines. And what I can do is I can then run a macro called, in this case, Power BI, and let's see if it blows up. Something didn't seem right, but let's see. What it's doing is it's actually publishing my data, and it's uploading it to SharePoint. And it's done. And that's it. It has published these 3 tables to SharePoint. And then that data, not to SharePoint, well, it is called SharePoint, but it's OneDrive. It's OneDrive, right? So now when I go up here, I can then go into Power BI, and those tables, well, let me first show you where those tables are. I'm going to go here and show you where that file is, and the evidence will be right here. Let's go to Power BI, to this. Now, here's a good example of the way things go. You could conceivably just drop the data into a local OneDrive sync folder, and it will sync up to the parent, right? I have never, since I installed Windows 10, I have never been able to get that to work on my machine. So instead, I just send it directly up to Power BI to the URL. Now, if I go in here, there, you see this?
Yep.
Cool.
You dropped the connection. He's very quiet. That's not something for Mr. Moffat.
Richard Moffat. Mr. Moffat, are you still there?
I report online. For example, I can have the corporate logo. I can tell it where the logo is. I can tell you the report date. This is the data by year, and this is the data by, look at all these things. You see month-to-date clean, year-to-date clean, all these things were calculated in Excel using Power Pivot DAX, okay? You could do this theoretically in Power BI desktop, but you wouldn't want to. It's tough enough to do it in Excel. But at least in Excel, I can see what I'm doing, I can see the results, I can play around with it until it gets exactly what I want, then I can pull it into a pivot table, and then pivot table, and that pivot table then is all I have to do is type the name of the pivot table in here, boom, and it does it. I just type in the name and run the code, and that does it. Now what it's doing is it's sending all this data to Excel. But let's look at something here. In Power Pivot or Power BI, if I have an Excel file that I've published to OneDrive, it will refresh every hour. Do you understand what I mean? It won't refresh automatically. I could go in and manually refresh it if I wanted to. Where's the file? It should be here. Did I? Uh-oh. Lose you guys? Uh-oh. I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Maybe just your little...
I thought that error came from this. Can you see my screen now? Or are we back? Are we still there?
We are looking at you now.
Oh, I'm scared. That scared me. But anyway, what we've got here is a set of data which I can, when I go to the data set, I could manually refresh this data set. But on the other hand, if I leave... Pardon?
We don't see your screen.
Oh, you don't see my screen. So something did happen here. Okay. Share screen. Oh, okay. Here we go. All right. Now you should see my screen.
Yeah.
If I go in here, I can refresh. I can look at the history, and this is really important here. This history here shows me that there's scheduled refreshes, and these are on-demand refreshes where I manually did it. Now the refreshes happen because I have a OneDrive setting that says update files hourly. So what it means, if I don't do anything else and I don't manually refresh this data, within the hour it'll refresh it. Because it looks and says, oh, that file's changed, and it refreshes it. And that's very cool, which means that I could do that and create all my files in Excel and use it for all of these reports, which I've done. All of this data is coming from Excel. And I can do 99.9% of what I need to do in Power BI just using these Excel files. And this is great. However, there are some things that, you know, that 0.5% that I said people ask for, you know, that, oh, can it do this? In order to do that extra 0.5%, you need your data in Power BI Desktop. So why don't I use Power BI Desktop and tell it to use these same OneDrive Excel files as my data source? Then I can add value in Power BI Desktop. I accumulate all my raw data, and then I put it in OneDrive. I pull it into Power BI Desktop and add my DAX and any extra stuff I need there. Because it doesn't refresh. Because if you create a Power BI PBIX file and you save it to OneDrive, Power BI does not refresh that data. You have to manually open Power BI Desktop. You have to manually open the file, the PBIX file. You have to refresh it manually, and then you have to publish it again and replace it. And this is, in the Power BI Desktop, this is a feature that they really didn't seem to think was important for some reason. And that just threw me off. They have the ability that if you can create an Excel data model table, which is a Power Pivot table in the background in Excel, you can publish that to Power BI Desktop. But there's a huge problem. If I choose that Excel file, say I go get data, I pick an Excel file, if the source, if that table is linked to a data source like an Azure table or a SQL table, it will not bring the data in that's in the file on the day I save it, which is what I really want. It will go and try to go back to the source and query the data directly at the source, which means you have to have a data gateway, which means it will always pull in the current data right now that's in the database, which often is not what you want because you did a month end and you're finished. It's a snapshot of the business. You then want to publish that. Well, it says, no, I'm going to pull the data right now. And there's no way you can get around that. And it appears to be it's by design. You can't tell it. Just give me the data that's in the table now. I don't really give a shit about where it comes from. Just use what it says. No, they won't let you do that. So what ends up happening is Power BI Desktop is not an acceptable client for these Excel files. Power BI Desktop has to connect to a database, or you have to accept the fact that some poor soul is going to have to manually open Power BI Desktop, go to every one of your PBIX files. So if you've got a bunch of desks, you're going to have to manually refresh every one of those files every time. Or you're going to have to live with a gateway and all the complexity and all the security and all the permissions and all the BS that you're going to have to put up with to do that. Am I overstating it, guys? I don't know. So this is very frustrating. But guess what I discovered? There is one way to work around this so that you can use Power BI Desktop. Power BI Desktop has the ability to connect to Azure databases, which are outside the cloud, and directly without a gateway. All you need is the name of the server, the name of the database you want, a SQL string or multiple SQL strings, and a password at that time. So you could create a read-only password that your Power BI works on, right? Doesn't even have to be an admin password. That has only got access to the tables that you want, and it can do that. So if you go get data and you choose Azure, let's go Azure database. It says, what is the server? And this is a really important thing. Advanced, this is huge. you could import the data. So you could actually have your data in Azure, and you could import it all into Power BI. Therefore, it actually lives up in the cloud in Power BI as well as living in SQL Azure. But because I'm using very small record sets, because I'm pre-aggregating everything, I'm not sucking up all the data, I've just got the data that feeds my charts, I can use direct query, which means every time you open the file, the PBI file, it will go and pull it directly from SQL Azure. No gateway, no hassle, no nothing, and it'll do it right away. I mean, remember we have this bandwidth. Let's see examples. So for example, if I go in here, I'm going to open Excel and I'm going to show you something. I have an Excel file here that does all my U.S. election crap. By the way, I'm heading to the big finish, guys, in case it's past your bedtime. That's what worries me, right, Martin? Is this past your bedtime? No? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay, so here's what I've got. This area about to here is actually a data query that says bring the data from this. It's just standard Excel query. The problem is I have to run through all of this crap to get. I don't do this all the time, but I'm just trying to get you this. Come on, there. Okay, stop. Thank you. I want to get this. What this is there's a website up there called Real Clear Politics. Now I'm pretty sure that because they're publishing, and these are all published. I'm sure that I'm not totally against the law to do this, but what the hell. I'm connected to a data source on the internet, and if it comes up, it looks like that, right? And so what it does is it lets me see all the various polls over time, and it gets revised on a regular basis. These are Trump versus Clinton, all the various polls. And so if I scroll down, if it'll let me scroll down, stop script, fine. That's what was going on. It will let me scroll down and see this table. But let me show you this. All right, go away. Thank you. That is connected into here, and I can refresh this, and it will refresh this data in my file. The cool thing is that there's stuff like this in here. From 725 to 8.3 is in their table. That's great considering it's 2016. So if I go down here and I get into January, now it's 12, 22, 12. That's actually 2015. But it doesn't say it's 2015. So I actually had to build a macro that will automatically go down whatever's in this column here, and it doesn't matter how big it is, and determine what year this data is actually for. So you see now it's 2015. So I've added value to this data. Plus, I've also put a whole bunch of spreadsheet formulas in here that are sucking the data out of the original data that I get, and it's actually, you know, I'm using Excel to add value and clean up my data. So, for example, if I were to go like this and delete these rows in Excel, say the thing was only this long. When I go refresh, this set of data is going to expand, and these formulas are going to automatically go down. Now, the reason those are wrong is because I have to run a macro in my code which will fill them in. And that's fine. So ultimately, this will automatically adjust. Then what it does, it sucks that data up into Power Pivot, and that data comes back down into a table. Now, what's in Power Pivot? Now, you could say, my God, this is complicated, Dick. It is once, because you do the same thing all the time. There is no difference from application to application. This is what's cool about this. This data here is that original data converted using Power Query, which is get and transform, where I unpivot the data and turn it into a standard database where you have a row for Clinton and a row for Trump. Because if I go back to the original table, this data is useless because there's a Clinton column and a Trump column. So what I'm doing is I'm actually going in and converting that data. Now, how do I do this? I go into Power Pivot, and I've converted it. And then this is the secret over here. This is a fairly complicated, but again, quite generic string that puts together the string I'm going to need to publish this data into my Azure database. And all I have to do this once because I know my source is consistent, and then this data here gets pushed down and comes out here as a single column in a pivot table. And this has only got 270 records, but I've got it built so it can handle thousands of records. And the performance is fine. I accidentally clicked on Google. Now let's watch what happens when I push this button. Now it may fail the first time. I have to add something to it. If you use SQL Azure and the Azure database isn't used a lot, it will go quiet, it'll go dark, it'll shut down. And then you have to tell it, the first time you ask for something from it, it will wake up. And I've found that if I don't use it for a day, it shuts down, and then this fails, so I just run it again and it's fine. But I can trap that. It says PBI update complete. So let's see what my code did. Now my code has expanded a little bit. And what it's doing here is two things. It's looking at my table here, and it's saying, this is a pivot table as opposed to a table. This table I want to publish to Excel for testing purposes. This one I want to publish Azure, and the fields are the fields that are in this table here, which is called table election data. Now, if I then look at my code again, my code comes down, and if I choose to export it as Excel, it runs this export Excel function, and in the end, it saves my Excel file. And it's using references to values in the sheet. So here's my target, which is a value in the sheet, which is the name of my personal logic OneDrive source. This is if I'm going to export it to Azure, this is my text driver, this is my server, this is the database, this is my username, and there's my password hidden there in that blackness, right? If I want to change this, all I have to do is change these variables and type in new table names, and it's running with any data source anywhere. So when I run this code, this is really cool. When I go down to push it to Azure, see this says Azure export? The first thing it does is it determines how many rows of 1,000 data are there in this. So for example, if I said it was 100, I have only 300 records, it would run this process 3 times. If I have it as 1,000, now the reason I have 1,000 is because you can only add 1,000 at a time using a SQL statement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this, and I'm going to run it right now. So let's see what happens. Well, let me just show you quickly. And this VBI is totally generic. The only thing not generic about it right now is this, which is my provider string that I have hard-coded in just for purposes of I was dinking around with it. I actually create my connection string. See, that's SQL, that's my driver, there's my database. These values are all back here, and I use them to concatenate together and create my connection string. Then I push, I've already got all my data pulled together. So let's see what I've done here. Let's go to here. Let's run this to there. Run it again. Now I know you're not going to remember all this shit. I know that. But I'm showing you what's possible, right? And this is possible. And the important thing, like I said, is that it's plug and play. You know, it really is. Now, here's my connection string, and this is my SQL. It says insert into. Let's look at what my text SQL is. if I pull this up and go text SQL, this is what I'm using. Insert into table election data these fields and then put these values. And so each of these things between a bracket here, let's see, from, oh, there's a bracket. Where's my bracket? Oh, here it is, yeah. So this section right here is the first record that I'm adding to my database, which is ABC News Post. These are this, and you notice how they have quotes around them because they're text strings. But these don't have quotes because they're numeric. And I have up to 1,000 of those I'm adding in one pass. So if I go out of here and continue this, what it's doing, it's actually pushed all of those records into SQL Azure. It's also published an Excel file. And if I go to SQL Azure and look at the tables, the table in SQL Azure has been updated as of this moment in time. And I'm going to show you that quickly. I'm heading to the big finish, guys. I'm heading to the big finish. Now, if I go up here, what time is it? 4:06 p.m. And you know how I just ran it at 4:06 p.m. Now I'm going to open these two tables. So I'm going to go down here, and I have two different reports. One is called Excel Source, and one is called Direct Query Azure. If I open Excel Source, it's going to show me all that data as of the last time I ran it, which was at 12:05 p.m. If I hit refresh, it's not going to refresh it because that was the last time that OneDrive automatically refreshed to the Excel table. I just created a new version of the Excel table, and sometime in the next hour, it's going to refresh itself, which in a lot of cases will be fine. But if I go here, watch what happens. Look in the upper right corner, boom, 4:04:26. This has directly gone to the Azure database without me doing anything and has brought in the data as of 4:04. You notice how it says 4:07? So because it's in Azure, because it's direct query, it actually grabbed the data, pulled it in right now in real time. And because it's only 267 records, which is often what you really want in a chart, is a relatively small amount of records that's amalgamated from a whole lot of detailed records. Even if it's 1,000 records, it's very fast to refresh the data. And if I hit refresh, it's not changing this date. You know why that is? The time is because that time is actually in the table, which is the time that I actually refreshed the source. So if I go down here to Excel and I say, this is the Excel, and I go refresh now, it should, and I find it doesn't always, it should, when I refresh this now, there it says 4:04, it now did refresh it. And the point is, it will always refresh it within the hour, but because I manually did it, it's now current. But if I'd left it, it would have taken an hour. Now, this is, so if you do not have the rights to use an Azure database, to buy one, and by the way, an Azure database for this costs, all my use of Azure costs me about $12 a month, because Azure databases are designed and priced for terabytes of data. There, if all you're putting in is a few thousand or even 100,000 records, it's pennies, right? You have a base cost of like $3 a month. And you can have 2 gigabytes of data in there. But if you're doing this kind of stuff, you're never going to have 2 gigabytes of data in there. You just pay the basic fee, which is like $3 a month. I have 4 databases, so I pay $12. If in fact you can't get an Azure database because your corporate IT won't allow it, you can always use this Excel solution, which means all you need is a OneDrive for Business account or a SharePoint library somewhere. And if you can't get a OneDrive business account, then forget it. Let IT do it and give it up, right? But if it's going to be an issue for you, you can use Excel and live with its limitations. But if you can spend a few extra bucks, you can use Azure combined with this all this Excel that I built, which is, like I said, totally generic. And you can publish to Power BI. So I'm going to do it again. So it's refreshing it again. And it's just about done. Now it's going to publish the Excel file. And I have it set so it can do multiple tables, right? No problem. So you can have multiple. I'm doing 2, but you can have multiple Excel files, etc. So now if I go in here, this is my Excel. It's not going to refresh. But if I go here to direct query, actually that was the right one. It goes 4:10. I was on direct query. So now it says 4:10, which is the time right now. So it's real time. If I go to the Excel file, it should still say 4:04. But if I go and I manually refresh this, and I go back to the Excel file, it'll go to 4:10. There it is, 4:10. That's enough sarcasm. Now, I'm pretty much done here. Now, the whole idea then for this is a really cool trick. At the core of it, in the interest of time, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. Well, I'll do it quickly, because this is a really important thing. I'm going to create a new file. File, new, blank file. By the way, if anybody's listening to this online, they can always stop it and start it, although you would know that by now, probably, wouldn't you? And I'm going to go and create an add-in. I'm going to add an add-in. Now, this add-in works great, but it sometimes doesn't get along with lack of memory. You got to have as much memory as possible. It's called the Power BI Desktop Publisher for Excel, and it adds a new thing up here. Now watch this. I'm going to go connect to data. I'm going to say I want to pick a report, and it remembers my reports. I'm going to go to this, which is there isn't enough memory. You see, that's what worried me, okay? Can't access the record set. Oh, darn it. So anyway, let's try to give you some more memory. Here, let's cancel this. Let's get out of that. Let's get out of that. Let's get out of that. All right, we're going to try this again. Like in anything, the more memory, the better. By the way, this is all being done in 32-bit Office, which means it really does work in 32-bit. You do not need to have 64-bit in order to pull this off. So let's go here and choose Direct Query Connect. All right, so what it's going to do is it's going to pull up a list. And what it's actually doing is creating a link back to my SQL Azure. Okay? So I can go and say, give me a date, give me a poll, give me an attribute, and give me a function called average. And I'm going to change this chart to be tabular form, repeat all labels. I'm going to get rid of my subs, my subtotals. And what I've really got here is the same data, which I can now take like this, and regardless, I can go design or analyze and a pivot chart, and I can choose a line chart that looks like this. And what I've done is I've created a mess, all right? But this chart here, which should have, let me see, poll. Now, poll, there we go. This might work. There it is. There's my little chart somewhere down the bottom here. Sorry. There it is. So what I've done is I've created this chart, which isn't really the all I want, but it's a chart. Trust me, it's a chart. And what's really cool about this is, yeah, okay, whatever. I have to change one of these. I have to go in here, change my field, change this field here to, okay, get rid of that. Yeah, okay. Anyway, it's too bad I did it, but now I'm panicking because I'm running out of time and I'm not showing it right. I'm sorry. Date, attribute. Oh, okay, there we go. Yay! Look what I got. Here's my chart. The exact same chart. Clinton and what's his name?
Trump.
Right? Yeah, whatever his name is. I can now do whatever I want to this to make it. I could add, for example, a timeline. I can. This is my chart in Excel. But what's really amazing about this is that if I come back here and I can add. Let me add one more field into this, and then I'll prove it. If I add as of into here. As of. Come on. Here we go. All right. See, those are all the same date. If I come back and I refresh my file, this is the big finish, ladies and germs. It is now 4:16. I'm going to run this, which publishes this from my, refreshes the query to the web page, pushes the data up to SQL Azure in this case, and also Excel. And my other file has connected back to Power BI. Okay, it's done. Oh, see, there's that error. Okay, that's cool. Again, I waited too long. I'll just run it again. It'll close it, and I'll run it again. Just to piss me off. Okay, run this time. Thank you. Now, this is now 4:17. I'll trap that. Don't worry about it. And now it's going to come back. Yeah. This is the big finish, boys. This is the big finish. Yeah, actually, that's good timing. Okay, if I go back now to my Excel file here, which I created on my chart, you see this says as of 16:10. If I refresh this now, by going refresh, it's now going to say 16:17. Can you see what? Actually, that's appropriate. What it's doing is it's telling me that it is going from this Excel file up to Power BI. And Power BI is saying, oh, you want some data? And it's requerying Azure directly and pushing this data back down to the Excel file. Therefore, I've created an Excel file, which I can then add more value to and include in any other Excel stuff I have, which is actually directly tied to my Power BI. And that means that I have a single source of the truth. Think about that. How many Excel files have people had where they show it to the VP and he goes, well, that number is different than that number over there. Why is that? Well, we did this one on Tuesday and we did this one on Thursday. You know, that kind of crap, right? This is actually really coming up with data that is not real-time, but it's real-time in terms of what the latest version is in Power BI. Therefore, everybody's using the same version of the truth. Now, I know I went through a lot of crap in a real short period of time, although you probably don't think it was a short period of time. But, hey, guess what? This shit's complicated, man. That's just the way it is, right? Excuse my language. I know you Dutch are all pretty sensitive about bad language. Not. Huh? Not that I know of? Okay, so here we go from current slide. Conclusions that I have drawn. I believe this will allow many companies to get values of power out of Power BI immediately and also going forward. Because if they establish this technique, this will allow them to just churn them out, keep them in control, audit them. There's so much advantage. And we can all benefit from this, whether we're inside a company or outside a company selling our services like the whores that we are, Marcel, right? Okay? As opposed to Martin, who's a kept man, right? Now, I'm done, ladies and germs. Let me go back here. Show you my ugly face again. I have to do this. Share screen. Ah!
There he is again.
And look at this. Look. My dog is still dead.
Still asleep. Yeah.
Obviously, he didn't find it interesting either. So,
I found it very interesting, by the way.
plus, if you recorded this, and it can be, you can sort of pause it and work your way through it, right? Yeah. This is a big advantage.
Yeah,
of course, you'll have to pay me every time you do that.
Well,
sorry, what, Martin?
We got your name on the end slide, so.
I know, it's fine. It's free. Do what you want with it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a big story. Like, this is a big story. Like, it is really an amazing story when you pull it all together. The fact that I can make it work, it astonishes me, because there's people out there who've just beat their head against the wall on Power BI for a long time. And
yeah, that's correct. And then it's a difficult thing, but yeah, well, big data is difficult.
Sorry, boys, it's not easy. The hardest part is the data. Yep. Creating pretty charts and stuff. That's easy.
And another thing I think is what to select, because you have a Power Pivot, you have Power BI, you have well, you showed some of them. There's too many choices, and there's not one doing the right thing.
But there is if you do it this way, because you know.
That's why it's a good thing you showed it.
The only problem with this is that if you do it in Excel, it's not real time. Somebody has to run the macro. Now, you could have it open on a machine and it's got a timer and it runs every hour. But I have found that 99% of these kinds of reports are not real time, and that somebody really wants to look at it before they publish it. And so you open it in Excel and you push the button and it refreshes everything, and then you say, is that right?
Yep.
Right? Yes or no?
Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, that and you can talk all you want about real time. Well, that's this incredible small slice of the market, right? But that's what they're pushing.
Yep, that's correct.
And if you want real time, you could have a machine sitting there running Excel, running every 2 seconds, and like you know, or really, if you want real time, you've probably got Wonderware or something on your system already, and it's already giving you real time. There's real time is for real time operations. You know, when you go into a room and they have all these monitors and they're looking at everything in real time, that's a totally different purpose than this. This is for analytics, either hourly or daily or weekly or monthly or annually, right?
Yes, that's correct. Well, we can talk on this topic for more than hours. So
let's do it.
We have to make it.
It's early. It's early, guys.
Well, it's late over here. It's almost 10:30, so people want to go to bed sometimes.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, God knows you guys need your beauty sleep. I'll tell you that. That's
yeah, if you look at Martha, you know why. And
you said it.
So, Martha, we have to finish it up, I think, right?
Yes, let's close this one, and we can always do another show with you, Mr. Moffat, for more Power BI.
Yep.
And, well, for this week, let's close it up, and see you next week.
Yeah, I might. Do you ever do English broadcasts, like when you have a guy like me whose German is like limited to hello and goodbye, or Dutch? Did I say German? My German's even worse. But did you do English broadcasts sometimes? Well, if you do, let me know.
We're not doing it at this moment, but perhaps in the future.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Well, dankjewel, gentlemen.
Graag gedaan. Thank you for being there.
Alsjeblieft, and what else is there?
Until next time.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
can tell you some. I'll tell you some of the Dutch swear words I learned. Is it offline?
Not yet.
Is it offline? You can edit it, can't you? Come on. It says live.
It still says live, yeah. Oh,
Are you offline, Maarten? Or?
now we are.